Hello, everyone. Have you ever heard of someone at work or maybe at school or whatever, a colleague or a professional, that they have had expertise in either autism, ADHD, or something else? And they said, I have counseled hundreds of people with autism or ADHD. Let me counsel this student, person, whatever context, because I have knowledge. This is what diagnoses sort of brought about, this expertise in terms of autism, ADHD, because I, for example, I've had job coaches who told me that because they've counseled many people with autism, they knew how to best counsel me as well, which turned out for me to be the worst job coaches or counselors that were around. Um, Even I myself was styled as an expert on the area of autism, and even I think I'm not, because you can't be, really. Um, my name is Roy Houtkamp, and I work for Student Plus, which is a team of student counselors, student coaches. Basically, we coach students on their needs when it comes to study-related skills. So think, for example, coaching on terms of planning, on terms of um, cooperation in project groups, asking feedback, processing feedback, that sort of thing, communication. And I myself have autism, and I studied applied psychology, which at the time was a bit frowned upon that I studied that. So the thing is that I came across many experts in my days, so-called experts, who told me that they've had lots of experience with autism, so they could coach me and counsel me very well. And it turns out that those were the worst counselors I've ever had, while the best ones styled themselves as people who really didn't have much experience, and they just took me along for the ride and listened. And I think that's what counseling by diagnosis has brought forward. I'm not against diagnoses. Let me put that straight. I'm very much in favor of them. I think they are great tools. I just think that most people who counsel others in terms of diagnosis have sort of ran with it, took it up and ran with it, and they see this diagnosis as something sacred, that the ultimate guidebook to the entirety of humanity, with, or at least all the people with that diagnosis, as the way to counsel or guide them. And I think that's kind of where the friction is, because it's a great tool for people who get the diagnosis to sort of recognize themselves. Like, I've had many students come across that went like, oh yes, that recently got the diagnosis and went like, oh yes, I recognize myself in this, or I recognize myself in this, or finally all pieces are falling into place. That's a sentence I hear often when people get the diagnosis. Like, oh, it finally falls into place. I finally know where I stand. So from that point of view, it's a very good thing. But after the diagnosis, you need a period of, or you need some counseling guiding in how to deal with it on your terms. And that's where I think a lot of counselors and coaches go in the wrong direction. They say, okay, this is what the diagnosis says, so this is the sort of counseling you need. Well, that is absolutely not true. Someone is has more elements. There are more elements to a person than their diagnosis. So I think it's important for counselors and coaches and whatever sort of guidance you're offering that they listen to the person and what they need. So the pro of a diagnosis is that it is a great starting point for someone who is coaching or counseling. So, for example, you can say someone has autism, and this is a gross generalization. Obviously, you have to look at the person individually, but for example, you can say someone has autism, and one of the things with autism could be that they find it hard to formulate questions because their mind doesn't really find the right words, and because they don't find the right words, they sort of don't go to the teacher to ask the question, which is essential for them to progress in their work. But because they can't find the right words, it's hard for them. And what I've noticed is that many people with autism, again, I'm saying many, not all of them, notice the slight difference, but many people with autism, if they get stuck on something, their natural response is to do nothing. So the moment they get stuck, and if they don't know the ways out, they do nothing. So for example, someone can't formulate the question, which leads them to not asking the question, which leads them to not completing the assignment, which leads to missing the deadline, etc., etc., all kinds of things. And that gets misinterpreted by the teacher because they then say, well, you didn't ask the question, so we thought there was nothing wrong and you could just do the assignment. So that's an example of something that you could come across. And then it's like, okay, you have autism, but you need help with formulating questions. How do I formulate questions in such a manner that I converse them so that I get the answer that I want? It is an example. So that's one example. But then there's someone else with autism who, for example, gets lost in everything that he or she has to do. And then the whole structure, the oversight explodes. So they don't know how to proceed in that sense, which is also autism, but it's a different, so you have different paths within the same diagnosis. And I think a diagnosis is a good tool for a coach to go like, okay, it's autism. So potentially these and these and these and these problems are top candidates to apply to this person. That doesn't mean that they apply to the person. It's very much a framework, but not like a determined outcome, if that makes sense. So when I coach students, I always, obviously, well, not obviously, but most of the time, we have this form at my work, so the students fill that in, and I get that before the conversation. And one of the questions is, do you have something we need to keep in mind, which can be autism, ADHD, etc. Which is useful because then I can go, okay, autism, so this and this and this and this is the framework. These could be problems, and then if someone comes in with problems like, yeah, I have some problems with communication, then obviously I can think of, because I know things about autism, I can think of the example that I gave earlier, like, okay, maybe it's with questions. So it's a framework, but I'm not going, okay, you have autism, which means these are the only problems that you can have. Oh, autism, oh, communication, oh, that means questions. And that's the trap many people fall into. That's where this diagnoses become dangerous. They're very positive for the framework, but they're very dangerous because people like to take the easy way out. That's just most of the times how it is. And it also is with the whole human brain thing, which is an entire story I could talk about for ages. But basically what it comes down to is, I think, and this is a hypothesis by me, so don't pin me on it. I don't think there's been research about it yet, as far as I'm aware at least. But I think because the human brain was trained from a very early age, I'm talking like Stone Age here, to go like, oh, this is dangerous, I need to run. You needed that instant snappy reaction in order to survive, because the world was hostile, and a tiger isn't going to wait until it sit down with you and wait till you made a decision whether it's dangerous or not to run away. So we needed, as humankind, we needed that snap decision. But I think society has advanced faster than the human brain has, which means that people very easily fall into that trap of oh, this is the diagnosis, click, it goes into that square. Which leads me back to my example of my coach, my personal coach, going, which I swapped out of, luckily. I swapped with a different coach, as previously mentioned. But yeah, that personal coach going, oh, I've coached 300 people with autism, I know exactly how to coach you, which turned out to be not the correct way, because I am me and not I am someone, I am the autistic person. So yeah, I think diagnoses are a very good starting point, but they're a very dangerous trap. And I think that's where the crucial point is, that you have to realize that the human brain works this way, or at least that's how I think is. Obviously there are more factors, but I think that's one of the major factors. Realize the human brain works that way, and step outside of the boundaries, and also just really have a good talk with the person you're counseling. I think that's, well, the path forward, so to speak. It's something I realized as well when I started working at the Fontis, which is where I work. I don't know if I already mentioned that in this story. I kind of lost track there, but I work at the Fontis, which is a university in the Netherlands, and I started working there as the autism expert because obviously I have it myself, and as I already said, I graduated from applied psychology. My graduation thesis was autism. I did research in that. So I kind of have like both ways. So that's like the book knowledge and also the personal experience. So that's where they put me forward. They're like, oh, we need like the autism expert. This is great. So you're getting to coach people with autism. So they only put students with autism with me. And luckily, over the years, I managed to say, like, yeah, I'm an autistic applied psychologist, but I'm also an applied psychologist. Like, I've learned stuff other than autism. So, and also for my own development, I want to talk to students who also don't have autism, so I can develop and expand my knowledge. And so eventually they did that, and now I'm coaching students without diagnoses, with diagnoses, with all kinds of different stuff, which is great. Also, as a counselor, to just say like, okay, yes, I have a particular interest and expertise in this area, but you also need to expand beyond. One of the greats that I always keep in mind is Socrates, and I'm getting a bit on the philosophical level, but I think it's worth mentioning, who also has his own coaching style. It's called the Socrates method. But one of the greats I always keep in mind is him, because he said from a very early age, he said, that the person in front of you is the expert and not me, the one doing the coaching, because they know themselves the best. So the best coaching comes from interest to the other one, or interest for the other one, and not your expertise. So that's why I hate styling myself as a autism expert, even though I have quite a bit of knowledge on that area. It comes with the territory of actually graduating and all that stuff. But I don't style myself as an autism expert, because I don't style me as an expert at all, because yeah, they're the expert. And of course, yes, I have tools that are very helpful. And of course, yes, I now know how to talk to people to get the information that is crucial, that is vital, because that's just what I learned with years of experience. Most of it learned actually on the job and not in the education. No slight to my education, was great, but on the job experience is just so much more valuable. But yeah, I like I said, I'm styling myself not as an expert, because there's just so much more to learn, and so many people with so many differences. I was also asked to talk a bit about when they go to employers, like if someone with autism wants to get employed. And that's something we come across as well. Obviously, as a university, you have to do your internship, your graduation, and we see people with autism, ADHD, etc., struggle there in that area, particularly. Again, gross generalization here, which I'm very much aware of. And I think that the best experiences that I've had with guiding them, one of my colleagues does that more than I do. I'm more focused on the earlier years, but one of the great experiences that I've had in guiding graduation people is just sitting in on the conversation and just telling them, like, start with who you are and what you can bring to the company. So the start of a conversation and the end, those are the most important moments of a interview or job interview or whatever. So start with all the stuff that you can bring to the company. Start with who you are as a person, in the sense of, like, you know, what your hobbies are, just try to tell them who you are. And then eventually, once you notice that the conversation goes well, you can kind of go into, yes, but I also, you know, need maybe a separate workspace, or because I need a quiet workspace because I'm a bit sensitive to sounds, or, you know, just general things that would make your life on the job easier, without mentioning that you either have autism or ADHD or whatever. Again, because of that diagnosis and those stigmas, those images that are attached to that. But just tell them, hey, you know, this is what I need for me to work effectively. That's kind of the general gist that I give students when they talk to employers. There's a lot more to talk about, but I think I got the general idea. But yeah, feel free to ask me. I'm open for questions or anything. And I hope this was useful. So thank you for listening.